When it comes to anterior knee pain, a lot of people talk about the importance of strengthening the VMO. In this video, I'll explain what it is and whether or not you should focus on it. The quads are made up of 4 muscles: the vastus medialis, vastus intermedius, vastus lateralis, and the rectus femoris. All 4 muscles act to extend the knee and insert onto the tibial tuberosity via the patellar tendon. The 3 vasti muscles originate from the femur and only work at the knee joint. The rectus femoris muscle originates from the hip bone and also works to flex the hip. This is the muscle you may feel cramp when combining hip flexion with knee extension. The VMO, or vastus medialis obliquus, is the part of the quad that looks like a teardrop. It's not a distinct muscle, but refers to the distal part of the vastus medialis with an oblique fibre orientation. These fibres pull medially on the patella and help prevent lateral translation and dislocation. The reason the VMO became so popular was due to the belief that patellar malalignment or maltracking is what caused anterior knee pain. The idea was that an imbalance between lateral structures in the VMO would cause the kneecap to track laterally, leading to inflammation and pain. Therapists would therefore try to release lateral structures and specifically strengthen the VMO. However, this idea was based on many assumptions. The first is that maltracking of the kneecap is what causes patellofemoral pain, meaning pain in the front of the knee. This idea has been challenged by several studies. Often, there's no evidence of malalignment in painful knees or a structural difference when compared with pain-free controls. Sometimes, the control group even shows more lateral patellar displacement. You also don't need to see changes in alignment for improvements in pain. For instance, taping provides pain relief, but it doesn't change alignment. Due to this body of evidence, other theories have emerged for what causes patellofemoral pain. Physiological changes triggered by simple overload may often be the best explanation. So now for the question of should we try to specifically strengthen the VMO? In those with knee pain, we tend to see general quad atrophy rather than it being isolated to this muscle. There's also variability and conflicting results in EMG studies. Sometimes there's reduced VMO activity in those with pain. Other times we see no difference between painful knees and pain-free controls. And sometimes the only difference is more VMO activity in those with pain. If you looked at this study in isolation, you could argue that you want to reduce VMO activity rather than increase it. When it comes to onset or timing, there's a trend toward delayed VMO activation in those with pain. But once again, not all knee pain patients show this, and there's considerable variation in healthy individuals. This makes the clinical significance of it questionable. When it comes to treating it, both specific VMO and general quad strengthening yield similar outcomes in the long run. Even if a coach or trainer suspects VMO weakness, you generally can't assess it in a clinical setting. Your VMO works alongside your other quads, and there's no way to isolate it. Every time you extend your knee, you're using your quads as a group rather than the VMO in isolation. You could look at muscle thickness on a scan, but you'd need access to imaging. If you just try to eyeball someone's quads, there's likely a large degree of bias and error. Beyond this, exercises that are said to specifically target the VMO generally fail to do so. The authors of this systematic review looked at 20 papers on the topic. They concluded that preferential VMO strengthening may not be possible and recommended general quad focus instead. It's also worth noting that EMG isn't a perfect proxy for muscle growth or the effectiveness of a strengthening exercise. To help demonstrate this, we can look at a recent study comparing squats and hip thrusts. In this study, EMG was greater in the hip thrust condition, but both exercises yielded similar muscle growth. One thing worth noting is that challenging muscles at length tends to yield more growth in the distal region. Given that the VMO is close to the knee, perhaps deep knee flexion exercises would cause the most growth of this area. However, there's no good research showing that any exercise will preferentially grow the VMO. If you're training through a decent range of motion and with a variety of movements, you're probably covering all of your bases for growing this muscle. Finally, what many coaches call VMO training is no different to general quad strengthening. Practically, these are programs of graded resistance exercises for the lower body. You can have hundreds of different programs that will yield similar outcomes. Walking backwards is a great exercise, but so are knee extensions, squat variations, and step-ups. To build muscle, improve performance, and treat pain, you should include a variety of exercises anyway. So if you want healthy, resilient knees, focus on strengthening the quads generally through a full range of motion with multiple exercises. Include some work for the muscles of the hip and lower leg, and ensure you challenge balance and motor control. By doing this, you'll build very resilient knees and get plenty of VMO gains in the process.